All right, guys, we are here, the Florida Audio Expo 2022 at Perlisten, checking out a whole new product line from them. That's what we're going to be talking about in today's video. Hey folks, I'm Gene Delasalo with Audioholics. We're here with Eric from Perlisten. We're here with Jackson! Don from HD 2020, now known as Haven Smart. How you guys doing?
Doing well today.
Awesome. So Eric, I see like clone speakers here. What's going on? Did somebody knock off the S7Ts or is this a whole new product line for you guys?
It's a whole new product line for us. So it takes a lot of those trickle-down technologies that we've been using and incorporates them into a lower price point, but a whole family of price points for matching the S7T. Someone wants that home theater, that true two-channel listening. The whole world is open of what you can do with these. Surrounds, everything. So, technology-wise, the same kind of waveguide beamforming technology is incorporated. A little bit smaller waveguide is used. Still the control and directivity, which is really important. Most people can't treat their room. There's sometimes some people have that advantage, but there's a lot of cases you don't. Those early reflections off the ceiling and floor a lot of times cause a lot of comb filtering. Especially when you don't have treatment, you can notice you can take just a normal everyday speaker and put it in a room, and we're going to sound better because of that. We're helping aid that. A friend of mine who's a world-renowned home theater designer said, "You saved me a lot of trouble because normally I have to treat more. And now we reduce some of that. I don't have to treat the early reflections in the ceiling, which are a lot of times difficult, costly in a lot of home theaters. So there's real live advantages. It's not just, science fiction.
Gotcha. So just to give you guys some background, if you haven't checked out our reviews on audioholics.com, please do so. James Larson reviewed the S7T flagship tower, and I have a quote for him saying that it's the best measuring, best sounding speaker he's reviewed to date. That speaks volumes because he's a pragmatic guy. For him to come out and say that is just really incredible. We reviewed your subwoofers, which have the lowest distortion subwoofers that we've tested to date. And as you guys know, we put subwoofers through tests that nobody else does. We do the CEA 2010 on them. We torture them. And these subwoofers held up to that. They sound great. They look great. So this is the R series of speakers. Obviously, it's at a cost-reduced price, but it's taken many of the technologies that are in your flagship products. Absolutely. Don actually had some installs. He's done a S17 install. Why don't you speak a little bit about that?
The Perlistens, one of the things that I like about them is they're truly an audiophile grade speaker that will play to THX levels with controlled dispersion. As a system designer, that gives me a lot of advantages. Now, you also make an LCR center channel. Now you've got a new line of architectural speakers come out. Right. So these are all tools in my toolbox. So if I wanted to do a system with towers, where a client wanted to have a dual system where they could have hi-fi as well as home theater, we can do that. If we want to hide it in a baffle wall or a discrete installation, there's a lot. It's an amazing product line. And I've got to spend time listening to these speakers. There's no finer speaker I've ever heard, honestly.
And I think that's what's really made us successful. You kind of alluded to that as well as, a lot of you startup company, you come out with a two-channel speaker. Right. What are you going to do with that? When you have a whole system, now you got something that you can actually sell. You can use do a full system in a house. You need every part initially. You can't just.
So what we need is system designers. Is that most even big audiophile type speakers are limited by a 1 inch or 1 1/4 inch tweeter. I mean, that's what compresses at higher volumes, and that's what compresses when you're trying to have dynamics in a theater environment. You just can't do it. Right. So with that array that you have, and that allows that, I believe, the 17s to play at 120 decibels or 117, 120 dBs. Right? That's really loud, louder than you want to listen to it. But having that horsepower and that dynamics really makes a huge difference on it. And I tell you, this line is really coming on strong and making headway in the audio business and the theater design business. And my hat's off to you.
Yep. No, thanks a lot.
So question for you on the output level. So we obviously, the S7Ts are Dominus level, right? That's a new category for THX. Right. Is the R line, is that certified for THX as well, or what level of certification is that?
Absolutely. So as a LCR, they are Ultra Select. And then as Dominus, they are Dominus surrounds. So a lot of these larger in-room systems, they would definitely use a tower like that as surrounds. So they're Dominus surrounds. The only thing that they're missing from actually being Dominus fronts is the sensitivity level.
Oh,
so you need to be at a certain sensitivity level to reach that Dominus level. That's ensuring when you put X power on, you're going to meet the reference level for an extremely large room. And that's literally the only thing it doesn't meet in the specification.
So it's interesting. You have different certification levels based on the placement of the speaker in the room relative to how far it is from the seating area, right?
Yeah, and so as a Dominus system, it's all about, sensitivity levels, distortions, and there's almost 400 measurements that you need to take to actually qualify, because by the time you do the system level to make the system, every raw driver, polar responses, power response, and all these, listening responses, then you put that all together and try and make a system that meets the requirement. And then you do all the THX requirements. There's a lot of work that all goes into.
I wonder if their subwoofers will meet the Dominus. We should try
Dominus
that out. The Dominus.
Yeah, we have a whole new Bassaholic.
Did I slip up and say that? See, make it fun.
You gotta make it
So what's the cone material made out of? Because obviously these aren't beryllium like the S7Ts. What's the tweeter dome material made out of, and what's the drivers for the bass drivers? What are those made out of?
So it's they're made out of silk. And we really like the smoothness and response of those. There's no edginess. The waveguide incorporates that. And we talked about that with the S7T series quite a bit. But what's really unique about it is that they work in unison so that there's lower distortion. A lot of times waveguides, when you reach really high levels, actually get what's called wave steepening. So the wavefront, as it moves through the waveguide, actually distorts. Because in the waveguide, it can be like almost nonlinearity is about 150 dB. When you start taking your microphone and moving it in and reaching 120 dB like we did on the S7T, the waveguides is like 150. So distortion happens. So what we did was divided that up. So 3 drivers gave us the sensitivity. We had the gain of the waveguide. And then we all pair those in unison and then tailor off the mids into the full range tweeter. At higher frequencies where distortion isn't an issue, high excursion is no longer a problem, and thermal capabilities are not a problem. So that together also filters down into the R series. So same technology, similar waveguide, and then also that pairing of the waveguide now and beamforming also now pairs down into the mid drivers, exactly like the S7T. You're going to got some really cool diaphragm material. It's got wool, long-haired wool, fiber, and a rough pulp in with some really very fine pulp. And really good damping characteristics, really good stiffness. And then the driver technology, not quite as long as excursion as the S7T. So there's your SPL differences a little bit there, your maximum output, but still extremely low distortion. Still long excursion by almost anyone else's standards. And so the linearity, we truly believe when you see a number of 120 dB, you're like, oh, it gets loud. Big deal. We don't really necessarily believe in it just being loud. It's about making sure you're reaching those dynamics. When you're playing 105, the dynamics to 120, that sudden burst, is there and uncompressed.
Yeah.
So all of that is what's really about a Perlisten speaker. Yes, we do get loud, but it is more about the dynamics, the transients. So what people typically say, the first thing they notice is, I've never heard something in a song, or I've never heard that level of detail. And that's all about transient response. The waveguides, even the silk, there's less than a gram of moving mass. So in a mid-range frequency, that would typically be a mid-driver, 4, 5, 6 grams of mass. So you can imagine what, a gram of mass in 3 drivers means compared to a 5-gram driver. The transient response, and then that just ensues and with clarity, transient response. I've said that like 3 times now.
Well, they're very musical, though.
Yeah, they're very musical. And we always said, oh, that's a home theater speaker. That's a 2-channel speaker.
It should be both.
Ideally, there's no such thing.
Yeah.
Well, if you do things right and properly, they both sound
There's
great.
some truth to that, though. I mean, I did a lot of systems with M&K speakers back in the day, not very good for 2-channel music. Sorry, MNK. They just weren't.
Yep.
They were fantastic on surround sound, triad, JBL synthesis. Some of these speakers that, although played music okay, they were really built and designed for high output theater systems. Now, Perlisten's kind of changed that game. I mean, some voodoo going on there. Maybe it's the milky, silky tweeters in the wool.
Yeah.
I don't know. But it's really, really cool. And hats off to you again.
Well, and we had a lot of fear about being considered a home theater company. So we really pressed the 2-channel aspects first so that you can prove to the world that you can do both. And that's actually achievable.
Well, one thing Don and I have noticed just in our experiences with testing out really upscale speakers, large, high output speakers, when you have a speaker that could play loud effortlessly, it doesn't translate to actually sounding too loud. Like a lot of times when you crank the volume up, if you're at a party and you have these giant horns, you get ear fatigue instantly and you know it's loud, right? Well, Don and I sit sometimes in my theater room and we're cranking the snot out of the system. And because it's such a resolving system and effortless,
Not painful.
it's not painful. We could be at 90, 100 dB and it's like it doesn't feel like it's that loud until you try to talk to someone.
It's like having a Porsche turbo that'll go 200 miles an hour. You're rarely going to go 200 miles an hour, but 0 to 60, 0 to 80 is pretty exciting. And that's what I, think of a speaker that has the dynamic range like that. So,
Yeah.
Well, the ear is an integrator. So we average the energy within a bandwidth. So when you hear distortion, even though it may be lower levels, you turn it up till, it sounds about as loud as I want to get it. You can tell the speaker's stressing. That's a distortion level that you actually notice. Your ear averages all of that energy together and says it's X loud. So if you take the same speaker with low distortion and you normally listen to it 100 dB, that's pretty loud, maybe 90, 95 dB. And then you take something else that's extremely low distortion and listen at 95 dB, you're like, that's not as loud.
Yeah.
You can keep turning it up, because your ear says there's less energy here because there's no distortion adding.
it doesn't change the tonal balance of this as the volume goes up. And a lot of speakers, people notice that as you raise the volume, it just sounds like a different speaker, and therefore you get that perception of it. So,
and that's typically 1, distortion, 2, compression. So, and that's kind of right back to where we long excursion, not to get loud, but to hit those transients. That compression doesn't happen. The tweeters don't get stressed, right? Because they're shared across the bandwidth in the mid region.
Right.
So all of those things are enabling what it took to make a loud but dynamic speaker that is, sounds great as well.
So the S7Ts, they're around 17 or 18 grand a pair, depending on finish.
They're
What
20.
They're up to 20.
up to
Okay.
20.
Depending on the finish, right?
Yeah. So what's the price of these new R series towers?
That's a great question. They're
developing it as we speak.
$10,000
a pair, right? I always thought they were.
That's a lot of
10
speaker
grand
for 10.
Yeah. So,
That's a hell of a lot of
that's
speakers.
almost half the price.
Right.
What do you say the diminishing returns are between this one? I know you want to sell the more expensive speaker, but how close would this speaker get you to an S7T performance?
So you're going to get the same dynamics, just not quite as loud. So I think that's...
So you scale based on loudness, not based on sound quality.
Exactly. And remind me about subs, because that's exactly what we do with subs as well.
I'll see if I can blow a
there.
pair of them. I'll put that to the test.
Our theory is, why should you pay for a 10 and get less low frequency response compared to a 12 or a 15? You may sacrifice a smidge, but not much. It's more about scaling. So a customer can come in and say, I don't want 115 or 215s because I want more even bass response in the room. So why should he sacrifice and say, I don't need 4 15s, I need 2. So let's take 4 10s or 4 12s and scale the SPL, get more even frequency response without sacrificing low end.
Of course, if you're Don, you want 18s or bigger in every,
we'll just
every
sell,
corner.
we'll sell him 20
415s.
15s. Just load them up.
Dude, I got my car.
Well, Eric, I appreciate you dropping the knowledge on this new series of speakers. We're going to have a preview article James Larson's going to do that's going to give more details on the nitty gritty. And hopefully in the next couple of months, you could send us some samples and we could do some reviews and measurements on them and see how they perform. And then we could have Don do his Donimus dance on them if he likes them. We know Don likes a speaker if he starts breaking out the dancing. So guys, make sure you look for that.
Bust a windmill in here.
How's your jig? Pretty good?
Jig. How old are you, dude?
Well, guys, I really appreciate you giving us this knowledge on these speakers. We're looking forward to covering them more in the future. Don't forget about our Patreon channel at patreon.com/audioholics. We appreciate your support. You get direct access to us if you want to suggest video topics or if you just need some advice. And until next time, my friends, keep listening.
Yep.
To some Perlistens.